Comentarios.
Thanks for these great examples, Leland. My one first impression is something that I often find in linguistic work, that the problem for the linguist is not the problem for the actual people who are speaking. And I wonder if this is the case with these examples, especially the sign language example, that they didn't seem to have a problem with their getting back and forth. They weren't worried about whether it was a turn or not. But for us researchers, these are worries. Is it a turn? Is it not? Is it language? Is it not? And I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Is this a problem? Is this just a researcher's problem of the categories? Or is it a language user's problem?
No. From a conversation analyst's point of view, what we're looking for are the user's problems, the user's problems. We're trying to see what they consider to be problems. This was presented as a non-problem example. From the tradition of conversation analysis, we can demonstrate that we wouldn't expect this to be a problem example because of the way the interaction took place. So this is not an example of a problematic one. I didn't get into that at all. We have examples where the overlap is problematic. And then what we do is look for the members. That's the jargon for the interactions. How they're going about, the strategies they use to resolve that problem. But it's the problems that they see because we notice that they change their certain behaviors. Like they speed up, or they repeat more, or they get louder, until they reorganize back to the norm. And these do happen often. That's a good question. Yeah, move on.
I didn't understand in the part that you were talking about the structure of the gesture, because it is the structure of the gesture in sign language, or in general we have structured gestures. For example, if I'm now speaking out loud, and I am doing things with my hands, with my voice, probably with my feet, even. And those are structured gestures, or they have a lot of variability, or some of them are structured, or some of them
okay.
are expressive.
I don't mean to, by structure, I don't mean that it's a particular form. I mean that the gesture can be analyzed internally. There are different parts. There's the preparation part, and then you are going like this. So before you talk, now your hands are in your lap. So there was a time when you raised your hands. That has a different status from the moments when you're using your hands this way. And then you put them back in your lap. So you ask people, what is the gesture? They'll say this. They won't say this. So people are sensitive to these different phases. They're called phases, gesture phases.
And the other...
Oh, and the other part of the question is it different in sign language? No, I tried to show that basically it can be analyzed.
But all these things that I do with my hands right now, lexical, are they like meaningful in the sense of I do know what you're expressing when you do this or you do this. Like when you show the woman like this, you interpret it like with meaning, like kind of a standard meaning.
Okay, well, really, that's a key question. That's a key question, and that's basically what gesture studies trying to figure out. Gestures mean, there are some gestures like this that have definite meaning. These are called, there's a special category called emblems because they're basically lexicalized. But there are others like this that are very recurrent. They show up very often, but they don't have any particular meaning. It depends on the situation. Like this is a very common gesture, but this is going to be an offer. It can be part of a shrug. You know, it can be representing some kind of concept if I'm comparing two concepts. So they don't have any. They're not like lexical items that you could translate, because how you interpret them depend on the moment. Now the other question of what about this, is that meaningful? You can't say, because it could be, and in fact we've been looking at this video for 10 years. We keep finding new things about it. It could be that a gesture like this, it's the beginning of her movement, her bodily movement. That, hey, she's mobilizing her body now to talk. And if that is read that way by her interlocutor, then he may have some disfluency in his speech. Preemptively to a close or something like that, because he can tell from her this movement that she's getting ready for something, right? Even before she actually says anything. So basically, the way what we feel about signs is that anything can be a sign, anything can be symbolic or rather a sign, if it's interpreted as being meaningful. If I interpret this in some way, then that is a sign that I have interpreted.
I just had a comment on the Rose and Harrison conversation. Could you go back to the transcript?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I also just thought it was interesting that they're also doing different things in the interaction. And so she's talking about her feelings, that she's worried, and he's problem solving. He's talking about, is she going to understand or is she not going to understand? So there's also, I think, a difference in goals that they have in the interaction, so that then she might take his facial expression as, oh, he's not, ratifying my feelings in the situation that I'm worried. He's not getting it that I'm worried. He's supposed to empathize with me that I'm worried, But and he's seeing it as, oh, she's unreasonably,
But he's trying to solve her problem on a different level from where she feels her problem is. It seems.
Right.
Now we have evidence for that, right? And what's the evidence? Part of the evidence is that she repeats herself in almost exactly the same words, with prosody, with an emphatic prosody. She said, "I am worried."
But you also see how this could then be used in an applied way, in a therapeutic setting, couples therapy, or it's like, what are they doing? And then they keep saying they have disagreements and they don't understand each other. And then you can apply some of this analysis and see how they have different goals in a situation, and they're talking about the same thing, but they're coming at it from different goals.
Well, actually, that's a very insightful comment, because historically, one of the origins of gesture studies, at least in the United States, was psychiatry.
Kendon.
Huh?
Kendon.
Oh, Adam Kendon and Condon was a psychologist, but I'm thinking of Bateson and some work that was done. Some of the very first multimodal transcriptions were done by a group of which Bateson was part, And it's called nowadays it's called The Natural History of an Interview. They took a psychiatric interview and in which Bateson participated and transcribed it, tried to transcribe everything, but they had no technology like we have today. But they tried to transcribe all of the different movements of all of the different articulators, of all of the different participants, plus the voice changes and the prosody and the language up to the phonetic level. So this was never published because it was just unwieldy. But that was one of the beginnings of looking at nonverbal communication. And the motivation was exactly that psychiatrists realized that something was going on that wasn't being captured in the language that was being used. That they could sense things from the clients that was ineffable to them. So they were trying to find out whether that could be codified in some way.
I think the story is that Bateson was showing his own first around in California. There was a family therapy session going on, and he had a one-way mirror. And he left the room, but first it turned off the sound. It was the body language. And that's when he realized that you have to treat this as a system rather than
That's right.
individuals. Yeah. Without the sound, it was more informative than with the sound.
Right. And so we're still trying to figure out how to do this and how to integrate all of these, because all of these things are potential signs, and they're all being potentially picked up and all being potentially interpreted. And as I say, the body is always present. It's always there. It's always in motion because it's alive. And we can tell this because if you're in a conversation and you all of a sudden become immobile, you come to a stop, halt, because your interlocutor is going to think something's wrong. And you can try it. You can try it out. Just all of a sudden stop giving continuers and just don't move at all. And see what happens. Then come back and tell us tomorrow. Any other questions? Okay.